Before he was a warrior of steel and circuits, before his name was whispered in awe as one of the Titans in the Justice League, he was Victor Stone, a boy born with brilliance, carrying the dreams of his parents and the weight of a destiny he could never have imagined. Victor grew up in the shadow of science. His father, Silas Stone, was not just a man of knowledge, but a pioneer in cybernetics and advanced technology at Cyborg Labs. His mother, Eleanor, shared the same passion. Together they envisioned a world where humanity and science would walk hand in hand toward a better future. For them, Victor was both son and symbol, proof that greatness could be nurtured not only in the laboratory, but also at home. But Victor himself was not content to be just the product of their ambitions. Gifted with exceptional intelligence and athletic skill, he dreamed of forging his own path. On the football field, he became a star, his name echoing through stadiums, his speed and strength earning admiration from teammates and envy from rivals. Too many, he was destined for glory under the bright lights. Not in the sterile glow of computer screens, yet beneath the cheers, a storm was brewing. His relationship with Silas was strained, driven by a son's longing for connection and a father's obsession with work. Victor wanted love. Silas offered discipline. Victor wanted freedom. Silas offered destiny. This clash of worlds would one day define them both. That day came sooner than anyone expected. It was in the heart of Star Labs, where curiosity often danced with danger, that Victor's fate was sealed. A secret experiment, powerful, unstable, and beyond human control, erupted in chaos. Energy tore through the room, shattering walls, igniting fire, and ripping life apart in an instant. Eleanor Stone, Victor's mother, was lost in that storm. Victor himself was nearly destroyed, his body broken, his dreams scattered, his very humanity hanging by a thread. For Silas Stone, the choice was unbearable. To save his son, he would commit the ultimate act of desperation. Using forbidden technology, experimental cybernetics, and alien innovations, he rebuilt Victor piece by piece. Flesh became alloy, muscle became mechanism, blood intertwined with circuitry. Victor Stone, the boy who dreamed of the stars, awoke not as he once was, but as something new, something extraordinary, something terrifying. He was Cyborg, but was he still Victor Stone? Or had his humanity been lost forever in the cold embrace of steel? The answer, as the world would soon learn, was far more complicated and far more powerful than anyone could have imagined, because in that moment of tragedy, a hero was born. A hero destined to stand among gods, to fight alongside legends, and to forever embody the struggle between man and machine. This was only the beginning. The accident that changed Victor Stone's life forever was not only the beginning of his tragedy, but also the birth of his destiny. When Victor awoke after the catastrophic explosion at Cyborg Labs, the young athlete he once was had vanished. In his place stood something entirely newer, being made of flesh, steel, and circuitry. His father, Silas Stone, had saved his son's life through experimental cybernetic grafts, replacing shattered bones and burned tissue with technology beyond conventional science, but the cost was immeasurable. When Victor saw his reflection for the first time, he no longer recognized himself. The strong, proud athlete, the boy who had once been a star on the football field, was gone, replaced by a hybrid creature caught between man and machine. The world outside was not kind. Strangers stared, children pointed, and people whispered behind his back. To them, he was no longer Victor Stone, but a monster created in a lab. The very humanity he longed for seemed to slip away with every beat of his mechanical heart and every whir of his cybernetic limbs. Yet deep within, Victor refused to surrender to despair. If his body was rebuilt to survive, then perhaps his soul had been reforged to endure. Though haunted by the sense of alienation, Victor soon realized that his cybernetics were not merely scars, they were gifts of power. His strength was amplified, his mind linked with advanced systems, and his body could interface with technology in ways no human could. He could bend metal with his arms, hack into databases with a thought, and command weapon systems with seamless precision. But such power came with responsibility, and Victor was far from ready. His early attempts to adjust were filled with rage and grief. On the football field, his dreams had been simple: victory, fame, and recognition. Now, those dreams were shattered. The crowds that once cheered for him would never look at him the same way again. The tension between Victor and his father grew like a storm. Silas had given him life, but Victor wondered if it was worth living like this. To him, Silas's miracle felt like a prison sentence. Every metal plate on his body was a reminder of his father's choices made without asking his son what he wanted. The man who had given him everything had also taken everything away. Yet Victor's transformation did not go unnoticed. The cybernetic hero in the making began to draw attention, not only from those who feared him, but also from forces who saw his potential. Criminals attempted to steal the technology within his body, corporations sought to exploit his design, and governments saw him as a weapon waiting to be controlled. Victor realized that he could no longer live in denial, whether he liked it or not. His existence had already changed the world around him. It was during this period of turmoil that Victor encountered others who would alter the course of his fate, the young heroes who would one day become his family. The Teen Titans. When Raven, Robin, Beast Boy, and Starfire extended their hands to him, Victor hesitated. He had been living in isolation, afraid of rejection, afraid that no one could truly accept what he had become. But the Titans were different. They had their own scars, their own battles with identity, and they saw Victor not as a machine, but as a brother. For the first time since the accident, Victor began to feel human again, not because of the technology that kept him alive, but because of the people who chose to stand by his side. With the Titans, Victor learned that his cybernetics were not a curse, they were tools. Tools that, when guided by courage and heart, could protect instead of destroy. He became the team's anchor, a warrior whose strength and technological genius often turned the tide of battle. As their strategist and protector, Victor found purpose in his pain, but the ghosts of his past still lingered. In the quiet moments, when the battlefield was silent and the laughter of his friends faded, Victor often stared into the mirror. The red glow of his cybernetic eye reminded him of what he had lost, of the man he could never truly be again. Beneath the armor, the loneliness still whispered. Cyborg's life was no longer about chasing dreams of glory, it was about surviving the nightmare of his own existence, and finding light within it. Each battle, each mission, was not only against villains and threats to the world, but against the darkness within himself. In time, Victor came to understand something profound. He was not half man, half machine. He was more. He was the bridge between humanity and technology, between flesh and steel, between past and future. His scars were not his weakness, they were the proof that he had endured the impossible and risen stronger. Victor Stone had lost everything, but from those ruins, Cyborg was born. And though his journey had only begun, the world would soon discover that this man of metal and willpower was destined to stand among gods, not as their creation, but as their equal. Cyborg's transformation into something far beyond human had left him in a perpetual struggle between two worlds. He was no longer just Victor Stone, the athlete, the son, the dreamer, and yet, he was not fully a machine either. His very existence became a question that echoed within him. Was he a man enhanced by technology, or a weapon that merely wore the shell of a man? This question would haunt him as he grew, but it would also shape the hero he was destined to become. The weight of his cybernetic body was immense, not just physically, but emotionally. Every sound he heard, every pulse of data streaming through his systems, every fragment of code humming inside his mind reminded him that he was different. He could no longer experience the world as others did. The simple sensation of touch was muted by circuits and plates. The warmth of his mother's hand was only a memory, for now it was cold metal that defined him. And yet, as with all great transformations, there was power, tremendous power. His father's technology had made him more than human. Victor could process information faster than any supercomputer, access global networks in seconds, and summon weaponry from his own body that rivaled the most advanced arsenals of any nation. To the world, he was a living miracle, but to Victor, he was a broken soul stitched together by steel and fire. In the aftermath of his rebirth, Victor wrestled with anger. His father, Silas Stone, believed he had given his son a second chance at life. But Victor only saw a prison of wires and servos. He resented Silas, resented the lab, resented the very destiny that had ripped away his humanity. Nights were filled with isolation, with Victor staring into his reflection, a reflection that no longer resembled the young man who once dreamed of trophies and applause. Instead, staring back at him was something alien, something frightening. But fate has a way of finding those destined for greatness. It was not long before Victor's abilities were called upon. At first, it was chaos within the lab itself. Systems would fail, security would breach, and Victor, instinctively, learned to control the digital waves around him. He was no longer just part of the machine, he was the machine. With a thought, he could bend technology to his will. Doors unlocked at his command, satellites answered his call, and weapons could be disarmed with a single pulse of his mind. What once felt like a curse began to reveal itself as something far more profound, a gift. But gifts come with burdens. The government sought to understand him. Scientists wanted to dissect what made him possible. Heroes and organizations debated whether he was truly safe to exist. Was he a man with a choice, or a living weapon that could turn against humanity at any moment? These whispers reached Victor, cutting into him like blades sharper than steel. He began to feel the crushing loneliness of being unique, of being feared rather than embraced. It was in this storm of uncertainty that Victor took his first steps toward becoming Cyborg the hero, not just the machine. When danger struck, when lives were on the line, he could not turn away. No matter the anger in his heart, no matter the bitterness toward his father, there was still a boy within him who wanted to do good, who wanted to be seen not as a weapon, but as a protector. And so, when the alarms blared and chaos broke through the city, Victor used his powers not for vengeance, but for salvation. In the streets of Metropolis, Victor faced his first true trial. A terrorist group had seized control of the city's central network, threatening to unleash destruction. Police were powerless. The military could not respond in time. And yet, Victor, torn between his fear of the world and his duty to its forward, he connected to the city's grid, felt its pulse through every circuit of his being, and in that moment, became one with Metropolis itself. He could hear the hum of every camera, the flow of every streetlight, the heartbeat of the very city, and with his newfound abilities, he turned chaos into order. He dismantled the terrorists' digital hold with a thought, disarmed their weapons by overriding their systems, and stood against them with the might of his cybernetic form. For the first time, Victor felt the rush not of anger, but of purpose. The cheers of the people, the gratitude in their eyes, it was a feeling he thought he would never experience again. It was the moment he understood. He was not just a machine, he was a hero. Yet deep inside, the storm raged on. Every victory was followed by the same haunting question. Was this truly him, or was it the machine acting through him? Did Victor Stone the human still exist, or was he being swallowed by the cybernetic titan he had become? These doubts would never vanish, but they would drive him forward. For it was not perfection that made a hero, but the struggle against one's flaws. And so, Victor Stone continued his journey. No longer confined to the shadows of his father's lab, he stepped into the world as something new, something untested. A guardian forged of flesh and steel, a bridge between humanity and the digital future. A man who would soon find himself at the center of a destiny far larger than he could ever imagine. Because the world was changing, greater threats were coming. And soon, Cyborg would learn that his transformation was not just an accident of science, it was a necessity of fate. Cyborg was no longer just Victor Stone, the boy who once dreamed of escaping the shadow of his parents' laboratory. He had become a man who carried the weight of two worlds, the fragile human heart that still longed for connection, and the machine that bound him to something greater than humanity's current understanding. His journey was no longer about survival. It was about purpose. But purpose is not a simple thing for one who straddles the line between humanity and technology. For Victor, every day was a struggle between who he once was and what he had become. His reflection in the mirror no longer showed the smiling athlete, the son who once craved his father's approval. Instead, it showed the metallic titan, the guardian of justice, whose body was a weapon but whose soul remained restless. The Justice League had given him camaraderie, but it had also given him responsibility. Fighting alongside gods, kings, and legends, Victor constantly questioned whether he belonged among them. Was he merely a tool, a living computer harnessed for battle and strategy, or was he something more? These doubts festered, yet every mission tested him and, in turn, answered the question he feared most. Victor was not defined by the parts his father had replaced. He was defined by the choices he made with them. in battles against parademans, in wars across galaxies, in silent moments aboard the watchtower, with a void of space pressed against the glass. Victor discovered his power was not just in his strength or weapons. His true gift was connection. He could access information across worlds, merge his consciousness with systems, and become the bridge between mankind and the age of machines. Where others saw cold wires and programming, Victor saw opportunity and extension of humanity into a future it did not yet understand. But that connection came at a cost. Victor could hear the voices of the digital world, endless streams of data whispering at the edges of his mind. He could never fully turn them off, never silence the constant hum of information that no human ear was meant to hear. There were nights when the glow of his systems lit up his room as he sat in the dark, overwhelmed by knowledge, by the unending tide of signals and codes. And in those moments, he remembered what loneliness felt like, because, though he was connected to everything, he was still apart from everyone. Victor Stone was a hero, but he was also a son. His relationship with his father haunted him even after Silas Stone's passing. The guilt, the gratitude, the love buried beneath years of anger, they all formed the complicated legacy Victor carried with him. He knew his father had saved his life the only way he could, but in doing so had forever taken away the life Victor might have lived. And yet, without that transformation, the world might not have had Cyborg, the defender who had saved it countless times. That paradox, that balance between gift and curse, was one Victor learned to embrace. And so, he stood not just as a weapon, not just as a member of the League, but as a symbol. To the world, Cyborg represented the merging of man and machine, the embodiment of a future where fear of technology could give way to trust in it. To the young, he was a hero who proved that even broken lives could be reforged into something extraordinary. To his teammates, he was the heart of the machine that kept them together, the steady force who understood sacrifice without ever demanding recognition. Victor knew his journey would never truly end. The world was changing, evolving, and so was he. Each upgrade, each new ability unlocked within him, brought with it new questions about where the line between man and machine truly lay. But he had learned something vital through pain, through struggle, and through triumph. His humanity was not something that could be erased by steel or circuitry. His soul, his choices, his compassion, those were the parts of him no machine could replicate. And so, when the Justice League looked to the stars, when Earth trembled before gods and monsters, Victor Stone, the boy who once only wanted to play football, the man who had lost and rebuilt everything, stood ready, not as half a man, not as a machine, but as Cyborg, whole, unbroken, a hero forged from both tragedy and triumph, destined to protect not only the world of men but the bridge between humanity and the infinite future that awaited.